Big Les's League, an all rugby league experience.
Hello and welcome back to Big Les's League. Obviously a little bit of a different setup for us today, not in the studio. We are in the home studio, you can call it, recording this one. We're going to be going through our origin sides. Now, this is going to happen every single week leading up to game 1, leading up to game 2, and then obviously leading up to game 3 as well. We'll predict our lineups for each of those games. These are our lineup predictions for game 1. I think we're at 2 weeks out now from when these lineups come out. So very, very exciting. Obviously, we sort of touched on our sides on BTF here, but we didn't really go into what our side actually is. We've obviously gone through the depth for New South Wales and Queensland. We've done a bunch of Origin podcasts, but you guys requested for me to just release the team. So this is what we're doing in this one. We're going to be going through my 1 to 17 for the Blues and for the Maroons at the moment. So for the Blues, we've made a few changes since last week. We've actually made a lot of changes. We do procrastinate on our sides quite a bit. But for New South Wales at the moment, in terms of the fullback jersey, obviously it's a 2-horse race between Tedesco and Dylan Edwards. Would not be surprised to see either of these guys pick up that number 1 jersey. I'm going to go for Dylan Edwards at the moment. I just think in terms of form, he's in the better form. He's in the better stat form, and he looks a little bit better than what Tedesco does at the moment. What Tedesco has done really well with his game is he's lowered the amount of unneeded involvement in his game. And what I mean by that is he obviously sometimes gets himself a little bit too involved or overly involved when he doesn't need to. And it sort of costs the team, the Roosters, in some key areas. And it's happened for a few years now. The Roosters have sort of used him as a bit of a battering ram. I think that he's really done well to lower the involvements and just inject himself when he needs to. Obviously, off a kick, the kick returns and stuff like that, he's doing quite well. But, he's not taking 2 or 3 runs a set, which is what he was sort of doing sometimes, over the past 2 years, which is really good that he's sort of taken that out of his game. Dylan Edwards, his support play is very good. He's a very similar player to Tedesco. And, there's always the argument that, why would you pick Dylan Edwards when you can just pick Tedesco? They're basically the same player. They're really not. Dylan Edwards is pretty much like a younger version of James Tedesco, in my opinion. And in some respects, I think that he's a better version of a younger James Tedesco too. He is just killing it at the moment. He's running 250 metres a game, just absolutely setting the world alight, Dylan Edwards. I think he gets the jersey. In terms of the wing spots, for me at the moment, Brian Toto is a lock. I think he's always going to be a lock in this side. I don't think you can really take him out of the team. He has been unbelievable to start the year. He's probably one of the game's better wingers all time. And then Lomax, for me, comes into the team with Turbo, obviously out due to injury. I've had to reshuffle the back line a little bit. I've got Zach Lomax in there at right wing. Obviously playing there at the moment this year for the Dragons. I think he slots in there quite easily. And just with the past few weeks that he's had, what he can do for your side. He can win you a game. He can lose you a game, but he can certainly win you a game as well. And I think that he's ready for Origin now. I've had my doubts about him. He does come up with a few low percentage plays, which I think could hurt the Blues in Origin, but I think he can do a lot of things right for you too. So Lomax is in there for me with Brian Toto. In terms of the centers, as I said, we've had to have a little bit of a reshuffle. I've got Bradman Best at left center. I've brought him into my team. He's convinced me now that he has to be in this side. I wouldn't say he's an incumbent, like Rennie said the other week on the podcast, but I think that he's definitely earned his spot now. And, with Turbo out, he is certainly in this side. The other center I've got on the right side is Stephen Crichton. So the combos on the left, you've got Bradman Best and Brian Toto, which I think is just going to be absolutely off its head. And then you've got Stephen Crichton and Lomax, 2 game winners on your right-hand side that can do a lot of things with the football. The combo that these two will build across an Origin period would just be absolutely insane. So, I have got Critter and Bradman Best in the centers, Toto and Lomax on the wings. I think that it's just going to be an insane back line. Now, in terms of the halves, this is where it gets interesting. We sort of talked about this on the podcast yesterday in terms of the different combos you could go for. Obviously, some guys to throw in, some names to throw in, I should say. You got Moses, Hines, Keary, Burton, Cody Walker we didn't put in that list, but he's certainly up for discussion. Jack Whiten has a bit of a smoky too to get into the halves there. There's plenty of guys that you can pick. I personally, I've gone for Burton and Hines. I think that is probably one of the better halves pairings you're going to get. I think it's the most likely one that Madge is going to pick now that Cleary's out for the for the Origin series. I haven't got Moses in there for one reason and one reason only. We haven't seen him return and how he is in terms of his fitness coming back from a pretty lengthy foot injury, especially a foot fracture as well. I just want to see what his form's like over the next 2 weeks before I'm putting him into my team. I've got Nico Hines in there at 7 at the moment, Matt Burton at 6. The reshuffle would be if, obviously, we do see Moses come in, absolutely kill it. I've got Hines going back to 6 and then Moses going into 7. But that is only if Moses is in tip-top form coming back from this injury. If not, I probably wouldn't risk it until game 2, and that's only as well if, in game 1, the Hines-Burton combination doesn't work. But with Hines and Burton, you've got two larger framed halves. Burton, Hines, they're big bodies. They're great in defense. Hines' defense is improved out of sight. Burton as well. His defense has been quite good this year for the Dogs. Also just a big body. I think his role in Origin would just be to run hard, tackle hard, and chuck up a few bombs here and there as well. Hines would direct the team around. Both of those guys are quite good down the left-hand side. They could build a little bit of a combination going down that way. Hines can manage the right-hand side as well. I think you're getting a pretty decent combo there with Hines and Burton. That's the only thing that worries me with this combo is they're very left side centric. They both love the left-hand side of the field, which is the only thing that sort of worries me. That's probably why I like the Hines and Moses halves pairing a little bit better. But as I said, I'm waiting on Moses. I'm waiting on Moses. As soon as I see that he can handle it, coming back from this injury, he's going straight into my team. In terms of the front rowers, I've got Payne Haas and Jake Trbojevic at the moment. Just to start the game, you've got a guy like Payne Haas who can set the tone through the middle, play big minutes. You've got Jake Trbojevic who can also play big minutes. He's a bit of a link man through the middle as well. And his defense, I think, would be so good against a firing Queensland forward pack. If, Gerbo is to play big minutes, I think his defense, particularly on the goal line, would be pivotal for us. I think defense is a big thing for the Blues this season. Now, at 9, I'm a little bit wary. Api Coruscant is battling a back injury at the moment. So we're just waiting to see how he goes over the next few weeks. At the moment, he is my New South Wales 9. I'm hearing a lot of rumours that it's going to be Cam McInnes to start the game at 9. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. I don't like it at all. But Api Coruscant for me at the moment starts. If Api's out, it's going to be a hard one. I'll probably go with Reece Robson to come in next. Then you're looking at guys like Damien Cook. I've heard Mitch Kenny's name get thrown up quite a bit. Obviously won 2 premierships with Penrith. He's quite a solid player. He just does all the little things right. And it's sort of what you want in Origin as a starting hooker as well. So maybe Mitch Kenny gets chucked in there. There's a few other guys that can come in. But yeah, Api Coruscant is a week-to-week thing for me. If he does go down with a back injury, gets ruled out again, he probably comes out of my Origin side. But at the moment, if he's fully fit, or at least he's fit enough to play Origin, he's in my side. So Api Coruscant there at 9. Angus Crichton and Hamole Olakau'atu are my back rowers in this side. Angus Crichton, obviously, in some great form at the moment. He is killing it for the Roosters on that left edge. Looks so dangerous. It might be a reason, if you do have Angus Crichton in your starting back row, it might even be a reason if you're considering to bring in Luke Keary, to bring him in on that left edge, just for that combination too on that left-hand side. It wouldn't be the worst shout either, having Hines and Keary in there. Keary's one that I am watching quite closely as well. And, depending on how Nico Hines goes, if Nico Hines gets named in the team list, which you guys will find out before I do because we're recording this on Tuesday morning. But yeah, look, if you want to pick Keary and you pick Angus Crichton on the edge, it's a great reason to pick him. Hamole Olakau'atu on the other side, he's been killing it. I want to see how he comes back from this suspension, if he comes with big form. Obviously, last year, he was going to get picked for Origin, but it was a big slump in form before the Origin period. I'm looking for him to come out and come out firing out of the blocks as well after this suspension. I think he'll go quite well. I think that he gets picked too. Isaiah Yeo is my 13. Cam Murray's out. Cam Murray would have been my 13 with Yeo coming off the bench, but Yeo's starting now for me. I think that Yeo Obviously a great ball player at the moment, and he's just picked his moments a lot better. I feel like the previous Origin series taught him a lot about his game. Since last year's Origin, he's sort of really picked his moments a lot better, when to run, when to pass the footy. He's become a much better player after that last Origin series. I'm looking to see a lot of that from him in this one. And then in terms of my 14, now you can either go with the hooker 1-2 punch, or you can go with how I'm going, which is Jack Whiten at 14. He can play multiple roles for you in your side, whether it be hooker, whether it be 5'8", whether it be, in the centres, at fullback, wherever you need him, he can come in. I feel like Jack Whiten at 14 solves a lot of problems, especially if there's an injury in and around this side, which you probably expect there to be. There's been a lot of injuries this year. He can cover a multitude of spots. And I think with all of the injuries this year, I think you've probably got to have a guy like Jack Whiten on the bench. It's why I had Matt Burton on the bench as well in my previous side when we talked about it on BTFU. Yes, he can come in and play a bit of a role in the back row, Matt Burton, but he can also, cover the centers. He can cover the halves. If you really need him to, he can probably cover 9. He is a bit of a big body. He can cover that lock forward role just with his defense. He can cover a multitude of positions there, Matt Burton. He can probably even cover fullback too, to be honest. That's probably why I had Matt Burton on my bench last time, but I'm going with Jack Whiten on the bench at the moment. Then in terms of the rest of my bench, I'm going Mitch Barnett. I think he's earned a spot, even playing in the back row. He was great. Yes, obviously a big loss to the Roosters, but he just puts in 110% every week. And I think in a better team, he'd be going a lot better. Not saying the Warriors are a bad team. They were a top 4 side last year. They're just in a bit of a poor slump of form at the moment. But even with the slump of form that they're in, you've got a guy like Mitch Barnett who's doing very, very well. Liam Martin for me comes in as well. I didn't have him in my previous side, but I do like Liam Martin. I think that he's an Origin player. I feel like coming into this Origin series, you're just going to get a whole lot out of him. He can play in the middle. He can play on an edge. It's just worth having a goal at Liam Martin coming off the bench. He's just an absolute mongrel. I think so much impact coming off the bench as well with him. And then I've got Terrell May in 17, jersey number 17. I am a bit wary. We could see, obviously, when we go through this side next week, maybe a Stefano Utsikamanu, on the bench in jersey number 17. It just depends on form. Depends on how many minutes Terrell May does get. He has been in some pretty decent form, to be honest, for the Roosters, and he's probably gone under the radar coming off the bench a little bit, and obviously with Spencer Leniu in that side performing so well, not many people realised how well Terrell May actually played on the weekend as well. I think that Terrell May gets that spot for me in jersey number 17. You can go a number of ways. You can either go with a Junior Paulo, who's obviously got the experience there, Stefano, which is the one that I'm really throwing up as well. A lot of people are going Connor Watson. Obviously, Rennie and Das are going Connor Watson as well to play a bit of a roaming role off the bench. But I've got Jack Whiten to play that role anyway off the bench in my team in jersey 14. So I would go Terrell May as a front rower. A few Origin bolters for the Blues before we go into the Queensland side. You can go Mitch Kenny. You can go Cam McInnes. Luke Keary, we touched on. Damien Cook, obviously, if Appy's injured. If you want a zippy hooker, you can go Damien Cook. Cody Walker, we haven't thrown up in the halves. And Scott Drinkwater, depending on his form over the next few weeks, could be an option as well. Jesse Ramian has been spoken to, obviously, by Madge Maguire already. So he's definitely a name to throw up. Let's go into the Queensland side. For me, the fullback who's locked in, you got to go with Reece Walsh. I think that he has been great over the past few weeks, even in games where he does make quite a few errors, and I think that's going to hurt Queensland a little bit. I think that Reece Walsh has been in some pretty decent form, but he does have a lot of errors in him. But it's just because he's a guy that wants the ball in his hands all the time. He wants to be the guy to make the big play, and that's what I like about Reece Walsh. He did very well in the Origin series last year. I think you got to pick him with KP out. I think he's pretty much locked in. If Reece Walsh, he does have a little bit of a slump in form going into the Origin series, obviously a name to throw in would be AJ Brimson. But even then, I think Reece Walsh does get picked regardless of his form over the next few weeks. But, Billy Slater might be ruthless and go with an AJ Brimson. You just never know. In terms of my wingers, I've got Selwyn Cobbo and Xavier Coates. Xavier Coates returns from injury this week, or looks to return from injury this week. And I want to see how he returns. He's my right winger at the moment. If he doesn't return well, Xavier Coates, I'd probably bring in And, this might be a bit of a rough call to some people, but I think he's been in decent form. I think he's been in a little bit better form, per se, than Xavier Coates when he has been playing. Dane Gagai. I think Dane Gagai has been in great form. I think he obviously plays on the right side already. I'd probably bring in a guy like Dane Gagai to play on that right wing. Obviously, if Xavier Coates doesn't return well or, gets injured again, doesn't return this week, Dane Gagai is definitely a name to throw into the mix there. Xavier Coates in my side at the moment with Selwyn Cobbo, though. In terms of the centres for Queensland, I think this is a pretty obvious one. Hammer returns this week as well. I'm going to be having a close eye on him. Again, Dane Gagai is a name to throw in and around the hat. If Hamaso Tabuai-Fidow gets injured again, doesn't perform well in his return, or just doesn't look 100%, Dane Gagai is a name that you chuck in there in the back line. I feel like Dane Gagai is really making a push to get into this side with his form. I think that if, Xavier Coates, Hamaso Tabuai-Fidow, or anyone really in the back line is injured or, not performing, I think that he could definitely slide into this team. Other centre is obviously Valentine Holmes. Valentine Holmes, really, really solid in Origin. He always plays well in Origin. I think that he's definitely in my team. In terms of the halves, it's a pretty obvious one. You have to go Cam Munster and DCE. I don't think there's really anyone else you can pick here. In terms of the front rowers, Ruben Cotter and Lindsay Collins are the front rowers for me at the moment. Collins has been in very up and down form, but we know what he can do in Origin. I think just based off that, you're probably going to pick him in your team. I can see Collins starting or off the bench, depends on how Billy wants to work his side. In terms of the hooker position, I'm starting Ben Hunt and having Harry Grant off the bench. Back rowers, I'm going to go with Jeremiah Nene and Dave Fafita. Dave Fafita has earned his way into this starting side for me at left back row. It works well because Jeremiah Nene, obviously a right edge back rower. I think both of these two start. Dave Fafita is just going to be electric, obviously building a combination on the left side with Hammer and Cobbo. I imagine Hammer and Cobbo will be that left-hand side. That is just going to be so scary to watch over the next few weeks. I cannot wait to see how these guys go over the next few weeks as well. And particularly in this Origin series, this combination is going to be insane, absolutely insane. In terms of the lock forward position, I think it's locked in. We don't have to talk about it too much. It's Paddy Carrigan for me all day, every day of the week. Paddy Carrigan's been unreal for the Broncos, and I think that he definitely gets that spot. We talked about Harry Grant at 14 already. I think you can really structure this 9 to 14 hooker punch any way you want, whether it be Harry Grant starting or Ben Hunt. I think it's going to work either way because the other one's going to come on in a roaming role and then they swap, and obviously then the other hooker goes to the bench. It's pretty simple. It works for them all the time, and I think no matter who starts, who comes off the bench, it's going to work for you. Now, in terms of my bench, I've gone for Jaden Sewer. I think Jaden Sewer's been in great form. I don't think he's a smoky anymore. I think he is in jersey number 15. I think he is on the bench in this side. He can come on in the middle or on an edge. It's pretty much a two-horse race between him and Jermaine Hopgood. I think that Jaden Sewer is winning that race, though. In terms of jersey 16, I've got Mo Fotuaika. I think he earned himself an Origin jersey on the weekend in round 10. He was great for the Gold Coast Titans. He was probably one of the standout front rowers for the Gold Coast Titans. Him and Jamin Jolliffe were absolutely unreal. I'd love to find Jamin Jolliffe's Origin eligibility because, he's been in some pretty decent form for the Titans and he's definitely gone under the radar. When you're talking about all the stars in the game, I'd throw a Jamin Jolliffe name at you. You'd go, what the fuck are you talking about? But you actually look at his form. He's been in unreal form. And if he's a Queenslander, he could be a real smoky to find his way into the reserves. Jersey number 17, it does depend on how he returns from injury. I will look up his return now, just because I'm so interested to see when he does actually come back into this side. Positive news for Flegler. This was on the 29th of April, though. I just want to see, give me 2 seconds, when he does return. NRL injuries. Looking this up now. I know this is mid-podcast. Casualty ward. Let's go to the Dolphins. Because, if he doesn't return, it's going to be interesting to see who they do chuck in there to the Maroons in terms of jersey number 17. Again, a few ways you could go there. You could obviously chuck in the Jermaine Hopgood if you wanted to come off the bench in the forward role. If Jamin Jolliffe's a Queenslander, I'd be thinking about him for sure. Can't find the Dolphins there where they are. Tom Flegler, round 13. So I don't think he'll be available. All right, so we're going to have to make a change here. This is always fun, a late change. He will not be back, Tom Flegler. So let's go and have a look at some of the other options. I probably would go with Jamin Jolliffe. Let's just have a look at his Origin eligibility. Jamin Jolliffe. I know I've spelt that wrong too. Origin. Let's have a look. Northern Irish descent. Okay, well, that's not good. Where was he born? Jamin Jolliffe, around one season, Gold Coast and Canberra Raiders. Starting off the bench, Jamin played Gold Coast, blah, 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 blah. There's got a photo of him playing for Newtown Jets. I don't know. Obviously plays for Gold Coast at the moment. Yeah, doesn't have too much on his Wikipedia page, which is always fun. All right. Anyway, in terms of if he's eligible for Queensland, I'd be picking Jamin Jolliffe. That's James Jolliffe. Yeah, Jamin Jolliffe. Northern Irish descent. Right, okay. Anyway, forget about that. Jermaine Hopgood's probably in jersey number 17 for me. In terms of other guys that could fill that role, you're looking at guys like Beau Fermor. You could probably chuck, obviously, a Dave Fafita back to the bench, start Jaden Sewer just to get a bit of size off the bench as well. If you want to pick a Jermaine Hopgood, it really depends on how you want to structure this side and put this team together. Sorry for the Jamin Jolliffe ramble. Just wanted to find out what Origin eligibility was, but obviously Wikipedia is annoying, so we'll have to do a bit of a deeper dive into that. In terms of some guys to throw into the ranks, some Origin bolters for Queensland, you're looking at guys like Jermaine Hopgood, Beau Fermor. You're looking at guys like Reid Marnie as well. Obviously not going to be easily getting into this side with the hooker 1-2 punch they've got at the moment with Ben Hunt and Harry Grant, but you're looking over the next 2 years probably to bring in a Reid Marnie. I think he could play that hooker 1-2 punch well with Harry Grant. You're also looking at guys like Dane Gagai. As I said, he's pretty close to getting into this back line. It just depends on how, Xavier Coates returns from injury, how Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow returns from injury as well. If these guys return poorly, Dane Gagai's probably straight in. Murray Taulagi is another guy that could come into this side as well. It does depend on how these two return from injury. Let me know what changes you would make for your Queensland side. If there's anyone that I've forgotten about that could come off the bench for Queensland, let me know. Those are how my Origin sides are looking at the moment for Game 1. All right, so news just broke yesterday, just after I recorded this podcast, that Jack Whiten has officially ruled himself out of New South Wales Blues selection. So it sort of contradicts what we had going for the Blues for that number 14 spot. I said Jack Whiten, I know. Now I'm going to give you a different answer. Connor Watson's probably my next one up for that 14 jersey. Connor Watson, Reece Robson, one of those two guys, depending on if you want the hooker 1-2 punch, or whether you just want someone that can play, a number of roles. And I think, as I said before with Jack Whiten, when you've got a guy that can play a number of roles, he's played a lot of hooker this year. I think that is a lot better, especially when you're having a season with a bunch of injuries from a bunch of key stars. It's good to have someone that can play multiple positions in there. So I'm going to keep Connor Watson in the 14 jersey like I had on the BTFU show. Jack Whiten, when he rules himself out of Origin, it makes that decision a whole lot easier to have Connor Watson in there. So Connor Watson, my current 14 for New South Wales. Cam McInnes, as I said, he's in the rumours. He'd probably be next up for me as well, just because he is, he has been talked to by Madge already, and the rumours do suggest that he will start there. In terms of my actual team, though, I'm going to go with Connor Watson, but let me know what you would go with and who you would change from my team.